As I say to people, not every client is a good client. Sometimes if a client isn't exactly what your company does and you don't find value, there's no point trying to fight them to become a client if they're not going to get the results anyway. So make sure you go after the clients that will actually be good clients and use whatever platform you're using or whatever you're selling, than just to have a client to be a client.
I want to welcome you to my sales podcast, where we have one focus and one focus only. That is helping you, the sales community, and sales leaders create more conversations with more qualified buyers, ultimately leading to improving your sales productivity and closing more deals. Each show, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you find, engage, and connect with more buyers. I'm Mario Martinez Jr., and you're now listening to the Selling with Social Sales Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow followers of Selling with Social, guess what I've got going on today? I've got my man, Shawn, the CEO of AutoClose, and also the author of the B2B Sales Handbook. This guy right here is a friend. He has a lot of information to share with us today, and I'm excited because we're going to be talking about cold prospecting. Now you all know about my perspective on cold prospecting. In my opinion, we use cold prospecting as a last resort. We should always be warming up our prospective outreach and looking at connecting with buyers. But the end of the day is that there are some occasions where you got to pick up the phone and call someone, or there's no data out there. You can't engage with somebody. You got to email them as a cold email. I get it. And we're going to talk a lot about some cool stuff related to prospecting today. So I want you to do me a favor and give a warm welcome to Shawn. Shawn, welcome to the show, man.
Great to be here, Mario. I look forward to sharing some insight on sales sequences and prospecting.
I love it. So do me a favor. Tell me a little bit about your background. I know that you're a serial entrepreneur and you've been in sales for quite some time. Just tell everybody a little bit about your background, who you are.
Perfect. So before I became a serial entrepreneur, I actually was a semi-professional tennis player. So I actually played on the courts with in the same tournaments as Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, and those big guys way back in the day. Ended up going down the education route, getting an MBA in finance. And then my mom said, either you go pro and you potentially become a tennis coach, or you go the education route and you get an education and do something. And as you can see, I went the education route and still coach tennis a little bit here on the side. But that's something that people don't know about me.
All right. Well, next time I go to Toronto, you're going to have to give me a tennis lesson, huh?
Let's do it. Anytime, Mario.
I love it. So, I did not know that about you. But your background before you became a serial entrepreneur was obviously in sales, but you also had a finance background as well, right?
Yeah. So I actually got my MBA in finance and worked at one of the largest 5 banks here in Toronto. Quickly realized after 2 weeks on standing on the elevator and staring at the computer screen at the top of the TV and nobody saying good morning, and it wasn't really, everyone just went by and went to your computer and you did your work at the trader's desk. Realized it wasn't for me, and that's what kind of changed my career. Got an opportunity in sales, and then haven't looked back now.
Funny. So you started out in finance. 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, crap, this is definitely not for me. I'm going to go sales. Why not?
Yeah. Funny enough, I was actually at a recruiting company and looking for another finance job. And he goes, dude, you're very good at sales. You're an extrovert. Like, we went through an interview. He's like, I have one VP of sales role. I don't know if you're qualified, but I'm going to put you in. And I actually ended up getting the role. And that's how I started in sales. But I mean, my whole life I've been, selling through various means and retail, etc. So playing tennis and being in that network and being competitive, it was always in my blood.
I love it. Congratulations on that success. And now CEO of AutoClose for the last 2 years. And with AutoClose, you guys, what's the best way to describe you guys?
So AutoClose is an all-in-one sales engagement platform with a built-in B2B database. Therefore, we have the sales engagement tool and the database all in one to help fill the top of the sales funnel.
Okay. So today we're going to be spending a little bit of time talking about cold prospecting. Now, you know my opinion on that. You follow me here on social, I follow you. But it's a necessary topic, right? I mean, like the reality is not every potential outreach could be warmed up. And there are occasions and times where even myself, I'm doing cold outreach for, looking at inviting someone even to my show, right? To become a guest on the show. So besides cold prospecting, talk to me about some of the other campaigns that you believe are effective for sellers to run and why.
That's a great question, Mario. So one other campaign that I think sales reps should be running is, for example, if they're attending a conference. If they're attending a conference, it would be great to meet people that might be attending the conference for a coffee there, because you are going to the conference and you might be walking the show. So a conference campaign is great to try and at least book 15 minutes with different people that might be in your target market and try and arrange just to meet them for a quick coffee. Because if people are at a conference, they're more likely to meet with you because they're already going to be there. Another one that we really find is when sales reps try and follow up with quotes. Sales reps are always sending out different quotes to different prospects. And what you want to do is not have to always continue to follow up with them and remember to follow up with them to see where they are for the payment or to sign that quote. What I like sales reps to do is to really focus on sending those quote follow-ups to try and get them engaged with that prospect. We also find that, sales or marketing people might actually do a lot of webinars. And if you do a lot of webinars, you might want to do a personal thank you to the people that attended the webinar, or you might want to do a specific campaign to something that missed the webinar to send them a recording or to re-engage with them. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use campaigns besides just the cold prospecting.
Okay. So conference campaigns, great idea, right? I mean, that's clearly something that I think we as a selling community need to get better at.
Yeah.
The big challenge there, though, is who the heck is going to be at the conference? So how do you find who's going to be at the conference so that you know who to start targeting? Otherwise, you're kind of spraying and praying that you send out a message to who you think might be at the conference, but the reality is they may not be there.
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we did was I looked to see on the company conference websites who might be their sponsors. You can also go on social and go to, for example, the collision conference. I was at #collision conference, and you can see who's talking about it. You can go on Twitter to see what companies are mentioning the collision conference on LinkedIn, on Twitter. So there's different ways to do that. We also did a little bit of the cold spraying where we said, okay, the conference is in Canada. Most tech people that own a tech startup will be attending the conference as well. So we did a little bit of mix of looking on social and kind of on the conference website, as well as some cold as well.
Great idea. And that's something that we do as well, is, monitor the hashtag. So those people that are tweeting about it or posting about it on LinkedIn, you can easily look them up. And then if they're not the target buyer, for example, let's just say you're targeting sales leaders, VPs and above, right? But you see a sales manager tweeting about it or, posting about it on LinkedIn. Now you at least know the company's going, but maybe that's not your target buyer. And you can go find that target buyer 1 or 2 or 3 levels above. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, the most important thing to first find out is the company that would be attending, and then you're going to have to do some digging to find out what job title at that company might be attending. So you might have the sales, marketing, CEO. So the most important, obviously, is finding out the companies that will be attending those conferences.
Yeah, gotcha. That's actually one of the great things about Twitter. Twitter, you can create what's called Twitter lists. Yeah. And these Twitter lists, if those who are tweeting about it, you can bring anybody who's tweeting about it through into a hashtag list and see the whole entire chain to figure out, the who's who of who's attending. So got that one. Quote campaigns. This probably is more on the transactional side, maybe the small business, mid-market type of modeling, whereas maybe majors and or nationals or may not necessarily have a quote campaign. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, I don't know. Talk a little bit about the quote campaign. Using a follow-up. So there's a cadence. I send something to you. It's a quote. Shawn, you look at it.
Yep.
Are the tools and technologies out there smart enough to know whether or not you've opened it and or messaged me back? And if so, do I then set up a cadence campaign that basically says, oh, Shawn opened it, didn't respond back, but 2 days later, I'm going to send a follow-up message and it's going to say what?
The quote campaign is an interesting one because what a lot of salespeople do is on a quote, you might have end of quarter offer you might be offering, or an end of month offer, end of year offer. So what you want to do is you want to time that campaign around that. So If they open it, most of the softwares you use for quotes will let you know this person viewed it, this person opened it, it shared it, etc. So there's different types of campaigns you're going to want to do inside the quote campaign. But the whole reason is to continue to engage with the person you're quoting throughout the process. So, for example, if a sales rep sends, say they're having an end of year in June or an end of month in June, and they want to send that promotion over the next 2 weeks, they might want to send 3 to 4 follow-ups to engage them, to let them know, oh, in 48 hours, the quote expires, or et cetera. So a lot of the quotes do have expiry dates, so you can use that to time your campaign as well.
Gotcha. Okay. And clearly I know organizations do that. I have myself and I have a very, very specific problem when it comes to discounting and using an end of quarter or an end of month, because essentially sellers train buyers to buy at end of quarter and end of month, and you'll never make quota in between, right?
Exactly.
Which is ridiculous. But anyways, that's a whole separate podcast not to get into here. So I get that. That's a pretty good idea, end of month type of offers, end of quarter. But going back to my question though, are some of these tools and technologies, AutoClose as an example, are they smart enough to know that if I've sent something to you, Shawn, and I said, hey, we've got this extra end of month offer, you're an existing client of mine, is it smart enough to know that it should stop the cadence because you've replied back to me?
Yeah. So most sales engagement tools will stop the cadence. You have the option as a drip campaign or not, but most softwares, yes, will stop the cadence once you reply. And depends. It could be whatever your call to action could be. It could be a reply. It could be to book another call with you using some sort of link in your email.
Calendar link or something like that.
Exactly, like a calendar link. Whatever your CTA might be in that message, you can stop the campaign then, because the last thing you want to do is when somebody's opened and replied to you is to send them another follow-up with some misleading information.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. So I want to switch gears and talk about cold prospecting using email. And, something that's happened is this is like bad crap that people are doing on email is now been pushed over onto bad crap that people are doing on social, right? And it's something that I'm very passionate about when it comes to creating outreach to a cold prospect that is not expecting your outreach. So let's talk a little bit about some of the biggest mistakes. I mean, you guys have a tool and technology, and you're obviously running sales campaigns, and these sales campaigns are oftentimes to, cold prospects. I call it oftentimes the spray and pray methodology, right? So there's tools that are out there that allow you to spray and pray. And I'm not saying that your tool is that. I'm just saying that that's what ends up happening oftentimes for sellers, is they have a spray and pray approach. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see from sales reps when they're sending cold prospecting emails?
The first thing I'll talk about, what I find with sales reps, is sales reps don't know who their buyer is. They don't know the buyer's persona. They might think the CEO is buying from them, or they might think a VP of sales, and they don't change their messaging accordingly. One of the most important things I think sales reps need to do is, at the forefront, before you even send an email campaign or do anything, you need to know who your buyer is. So that would be one mistake I find. Another one that I've been finding more and more is sales reps are talking about themselves in the first line of an email. So, for example, they might say, hi, my name is Mario and I'm the CEO, and they keep talking. But the prospect already knows by you sending that email that Mario at Vangresso is the CEO. So I think you need to talk about the challenges in that first line of what your prospect might be dealing with. Because if you can't get them in that first 3 seconds to be interested, they're not going to reply to the rest of your email. So I think another thing I would say is definitely stop talking about yourself and your company and your product, and talking more about the challenges and how you can help that prospect. I'll say another one is not having a CTA. So people write cold emails and they just expect people to know what to do. I'm supposed to reply. I'm supposed to click on your Calendly, etc. I had a sales rep once tell me that they got an email from a client saying they were just not happy with the platform. And the reason why was they had 0% click rate. Well, if you have nothing to click in your email, you can't expect to have anything as a click rate. So I think not having the call to action, you have to know what your call to action would be. And as I said, that could be a reply you could be looking for, or it could be clicking on your calendar to book a meeting.
So what you just talked about is what we call the PVC sales methodology. And the PVC sales methodology for Vangresso is all around P for personalize.
Yep.
V to bring value.
Yep.
And value is specifically solving the business problem that your product or service solves for, right?
Yep.
And the C is include a CTA. right?
Exactly it.
PVC, right? And we have a whole podcast. We can link it up into the show notes for you guys who haven't heard the PVC. In fact, we're getting ready to launch a giant ebook all on the PVC sales methodology that's coming out in the next 30 days or so. And what's interesting about this is you're absolutely right. Sellers don't know who their buyer is, and they don't know what business problem they solve. You know, I was recently giving a keynote to a couple hundred sellers, and the question I asked them is what is the business problem that you solve? Now, that business problem could be problems. You may have different solutions or multiple solutions that help solve a specific problem, but most sellers cannot answer that question. Most sellers will immediately go to a product features benefit statement.
Yep.
Right? A product features benefit statement. And let me give you an example. So with Vengresso, what problem do we solve? If someone says, who's Vengresso? What do you guys do? I say, oh, we help sellers and sales teams create more sales conversations with more qualified buyers. And we help increase win rates. Now, what I just said there is what the result is. It's not the problem. The problem is, if you do a translation, is I, as a seller, need to create more conversations to have a bigger and fuller pipeline.
Exactly.
For sales leaders, they're looking to increase win rates because the problem is many sellers are single-threaded when it comes to a sales opportunity. So if I can teach you how to leverage digital, that allows you to multi-thread in an organization to surround those 6.8 buyers, that's going to increase the win rates. You see, so I'm speaking to the results of what we're going to solve, which is the problem that we're going to solve. The results of the problem that we're going to solve. And that's really hard for salespeople to do that. And primarily, you know, the bigger the organization, there's usually sales enablement organization or marketing serves this role. Marketing and sales enablement can't even answer that question. And that's sad. So if you're listening in, Shawn just mentioned something that's super important, right? The thing he mentioned is that you need to know thy buyer. Know thy buyer before you send an email. What does that mean? Well, the problems that you're looking to solve for one buyer at one title may be different than the problems you're looking to solve for an influencing buyer that may have a different title, right? Now, in our world, sales is sales. Whether you're a sales manager or whether you're the chief revenue officer, you still want to have your sales reps create more conversations with more qualified buyers and increase win rates, period, end of discussion. So those are the two problems that we solve. And that's what I ask yourself as you're listening in right now. Ask, shoot, what problem do I solve or what problems do I solve? Because most people cannot answer that question. They go immediately into a product features benefit statement. That's your first problem. That's how you know. Your first step is admitting, I don't realize or I don't know how to articulate in less than 2 sentences what business problem you solve. Do you agree with me?
I completely agree. And it was something I learned late because your messaging to an introvert has to be different than your messaging to an extrovert. Your messaging to a CEO has to be different than messaging to a sales rep. So you have to know your buyer. If you don't know your buyer, you're going to not get the results you're looking for.
So you mentioned, though, that oftentimes sales reps talk about themselves, not about the problem that they solve first, right? The challenges that they solve. And that's absolutely correct. In fact, people have heard me say this before in my podcast. I've got 2 email folders. One calls emails that suck and emails that don't suck. 136 emails that suck in that particular folder. And I've got 6. I just looked right now. I got 6 inside of emails that don't suck. And so one day I'm going to do a keynote all around emails that suck. And it'll hopefully be fun to see some of these emails. But some of this stuff is like people are just spraying and praying out there hoping that something sticks. But you talk about the challenges first. And that's absolutely on point. Because one of the things we do, Shawn, and tell me what you think about this, is in our Selling with Video training program, we teach sellers that when I'm going to send you a video, I need to be able to speak to something like this. Hey, Shawn, generally when I talk with sales vice presidents, there are 2 problems they're looking to solve. Number 1, how to create more sales conversations for their sales team. And number 2, how to increase win rates for their sales team. Are those problems that you're trying to solve? Because if so, there are 2 pieces of information that I think will be super valuable that I've attached below. The first one is a blog article that answers the question, how to increase your sales conversations. Yep. The second item is an ebook that addresses increasing your win rates using digital. If you find those 2 things of value, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to schedule a 30-minute conversation to talk more about how we do that as an in-depth process. Now, that was my script that I just did right off the top of my head of what we teach sellers how to do. What did I talk about? First thing you said, talk about the challenges. Did I check that box?
You did.
Next thing is, did I bring value to address those two problems by adding in content?
100%. Yep.
Will that create a potential click-through?
It will get a click-through if that person is interested, definitely. And if the person's not interested, you don't want them to click through anyway. You don't want them to waste your time. So at the end of it, if those two problems can resonate with them and their company, they're going to click away. And if they're not, then you don't. You want the clients that are going to buy from you, not the clients that are going to take the time to have demos and calls and get a quote and not interested. So I think that'd be a perfect pitch.
You hit the nail on the head. And that's where some salespeople, we try to create opportunity where there's no opportunity, right?
Yep.
And I'm not saying that you can't nurture someone over the course of time, because no today doesn't mean no tomorrow, right? So I'm not saying you can't nurture somebody, but the conversations that I want to have with sales leaders are not, so what's this thing called social selling? No. What's this thing called like skills development for video prospecting? I'm not trying to teach you that. There are a billion pieces of content out there that you could go research on your own to go figure that out. What I want to talk to is people that say, oh my God, my guys are doing 100 cold calls a day. We on average reach about 3 to 7 people per 100 calls. And I don't know what to do about the other 90% or 97% of the audience that I'm not reaching. I know there's something different and I got to do something different. How do I leverage digital to make that happen? That's who I want to talk to.
You know, as I say to people, not every client is a good client. Sometimes if a client isn't exactly what your company does and you don't find value, there's no point trying to fight them to become a client if they're not going to get the results anyway. So make sure you go after the clients that will actually be good clients and use whatever platform you're using or whatever you're selling than just to have a client to be a client.
Yeah, beautiful. Now, you mentioned CTA. Talk a little bit about the different types of CTAs that you've seen. Is a CTA, obviously there's meeting, like you want to go for the jugular and ask for the meeting. That's the highest CTA you can ask for. What other type of CTAs can a sales rep drive to?
There's different types of CTAs you can look at. One might be if you want to build more trust. You might want to show like a case study or another company you're working with and say, hey, hey Mario, a company that does something very similar to you is using A, B, and C. This is the results they have. So you want to continue to build that trust. I love Calendly. I love that because that takes away the friction of going back and forth with 6 emails. What time works for you? What time works for you? And going back. So Calendly's been a great CTA. But if you want to give an ebook or a blog post, so there's different things you want to do. But at the end of the day, you want them to click something. And you want to make sure you're tracking what they're clicking. But those are some of the other ones that I've seen work inside of campaigns.
Yeah, so some of the CTAs, I think I've talked about this before. We had a whole podcast on creating connections to conversations. And most of us want to go straight to, I want to have a 15-minute meeting. I hate that. Please do not even waste my time in prospecting to me and asking for 15 minutes because it's a worthless meeting. You can't build a relationship, rapport, and understand a business problem in 15 minutes. Minimum 30. All right, I digressed. But that having been said, so most people want to ask for the meeting on a CTA. But a CTA, to Shawn's point, could absolutely be asking a question to create engagement. For example, are these two problems that you're struggling with? Let me know so I don't waste your time and my time. That might be that. Or it might be, I want to call your attention to page 4 of that particular ebook that I attached as a link. If you go to page 4, it's going to talk about whatever it might be. What are your thoughts on that? Are these challenges that you're facing? Right? So you're directing them to do something and you're not even asking for a meeting. I think a lot of people, use Calendly though in the wrong way. By the way, it's Calendly, Time Trade. We use HubSpot's calendar link, right?
There's tons.
Any of those things are great platforms. But a lot of people use that in the wrong way because a lot of sales reps say, I'd love to be able to schedule a meeting with you and here's my link to go ahead and click on that. Now look, if I'm the CEO and you're telling me, go click on a link to book a meeting, that's rude and inconsiderate. You should be telling me, the way I always train salespeople, because I'd love to get your opinion on this. I want the salesperson, if they're going to create a cold outreach message, I want them to put 3 dates and times that they're available inside of the meeting. And it's going to be 3 dates and times that are 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, and 4 weeks out at 9, 1, and 4, right? 9, 1, and 4. And the reason why we go 2, 3, and 4 weeks out is because as a CEO, my schedule is probably already busy 2 weeks out. Yep. Right? As a VP of sales, already busy 2 weeks out. Don't send me an email on Tuesday saying, do you have time on Thursday and Friday to meet? No, I don't have time to meet on Thursday and Friday. What's wrong with you? But then I always do this, and tell me what you think about this, Shawn, on emails. I'll put those 3 dates, and then I write, alternatively, to make life easy, I've placed my entire calendar online so we can avoid email scheduling volleyball.
Exactly.
Here's the link. Just click on that link and schedule a 30-minute meeting when both of our calendars show free if any of the above dates don't work for you. And then I write, does that work for you? I look forward to chatting. And that neutralizes the perspective of maybe a pompous or arrogant attitude where someone gets something like, who the heck are you? No, I'm not going to just click on your link, right? Like, work for my meeting. I think that's out there. But I feel like it neutralizes because I'm going to give you some times. But if that doesn't work, here's my calendar. And we can avoid, and I specifically say, avoid email scheduling volleyball. Does that work for you? What do you think?
I completely agree with that. I think giving them the alternative is great because, it doesn't sound forceful. I guess, here's my calendar, book a time this week that works for you. But giving them the options, and obviously as a CEO, yes, you will be busy 2, 3, 4 weeks out. So I really like that. Talking about CTAs, another one that I find is interesting is, and I've seen people do it, and I love when sales reps do it, is at the end of the sequence or a campaign, they ask for A, B, C, D. And they ask something like, I noticed you haven't replied to my email. Is it A, you don't have budget? B, the product isn't for you. C, you're currently using our competitor. Or D, whatever that might be. And I like that way because at the end, not everyone is going to be a client. So even by getting a reply to them saying A, B, C, and D, you're starting that interaction to learn more about them. And that will help fill in whatever CRM you're using with, they don't have budget, reach back out in July. Or they're currently using or on contract with a competitor. So I like that as a question in a sequence as well, because at least you get a reply, which is a lot better than not getting any reply at all.
Yeah. Now look, I know that that's good because you'll get a reply and somebody might say, just write the letter A, B, or C, or D, right? But I think it's super cheesy, man, because I just know that that's automation, right? It's at the end of the campaign and it's super cheesy, but it works.
You know what? I wouldn't write that on my second or third email, but at the end of it, if you've tried really hard and you're being persistent and you're still not getting it, I find to get some sort of engagement, some sort of reply is better than getting nothing at all. So I've seen some people use it. You can be, a little bit witty in your answers too to try and build a little bit more of that relationship. But I mean, it is cheesy, but it also sometimes will get you some sort of answer so you know that you're not wasting your time and you're not wasting your prospect's time. Yeah,
valid point. And at the end of the campaign, I could see how that might be good. Let me ask you another question. I think we had talked about some research that you did on best subject lines to create a high open rate. Can you share some of those secrets that you had?
Yeah, so subject lines, people don't understand. I think subject lines are just as important as your email, because if you can't get someone to open your email because of your subject line, they're not going to even see what you're writing. I think one of the biggest mistakes is a lot of people open now their emails on mobile. So you only see a few words in that subject line. So anyone that's writing, I would even say 5+ words in your subject line, your prospect is only going to probably see 3 of them. So if they're not the best 3, that might hinder your open rate. But I find very simple, like, high first name works really well. Company plus company, 30 minutes next week, but very something, need any help? If you're doing a webinar, you're invited, but something that's very short, 2 to 3 words, I find helps get the best open lines, because you want to make them interested in opening that email to at least to start to engage with them.
So you bring up something that I actually never went to my phone to look at. This is actually pretty interesting. Clearly, I knew that you only have a short number of words on a subject line, right? So I have the iPhone 10, and it's the normal size, right? So the iPhone 10. And I'm looking at my subject lines, and on average, the most number of words you get into a subject line when looking at it at ascending order, right, is 4 words. Virtual video conference call. Your meeting attendees are, and then WAIT ... right?
Yeah.
One of them has 6 words. I am looking to join my, right? So it's all short words. They're super short words, right?
Yeah.
So interesting. So you've got, what you're saying is think about 5 words is pretty much your max.
Yeah.
That somebody will see to get them to open and say, well, this is interesting to me, right? Or not. So basically we've got 5 words on average that will trigger me to be able to take a look at that. That's great insight there that you just brought forward that I never really thought about. And the options that you mentioned, can you repeat again some of those options?
So some of them would be like, I actually get, hi, Shawn. hi Mario, as just the subject line. You almost act like you met him, know him, you're friends with him. Shawn plus Mario, or company plus company. You want to personalize your subject line for sure, but you also want to make sure you've done a little bit of due diligence. You know the company you're prospecting to, you know the person's first name, etc. If you just say something that has nothing to do with the person's name or company, they're going to probably think it's a cold email right away. So I always like to personalize it with some sort of thing, usually either the first name or company.
Yeah, I think sales automation tools that have inside the subject line like Shawn, comma, or Shawn, I thought you would, right?
Yeah.
So that's super personalized with using the name. Of course, I know it's automation, but every time someone uses my name, Mario, it's like, ooh, I get super like, oh, what is this? Like, with Mario, I know you what? What do you know about me? But the downside to that is you better make sure you know what it is I'm looking for, right? So if you're going to use a phrase like that, just make sure you be careful. But adding in that person's first name definitely has been a secret weapon for us as well. All right, good. So now we've talked about a number of different things, including subject lines. Let's talk about the ideal length of a sales sequence. What do you think it is and why?
Yeah, and this is another mistake I really find with sales reps is they write really, really long emails. And that's where, you're not supposed to write a whole blog on your email. So what I would recommend on a cold email sequence, I usually like to tell sales reps 75 to 125 words. You want to keep it, the first email, 75 to 125 words, and even the follow-up emails a lot shorter. I'm almost saying like 3 to 4 sentences max on your follow-ups, because you want to make it feel very personal. You're not blasting to thousands of people using an email marketing or a marketing automation platform like, with a MailChimp, et cetera. Leave that to the marketing people. As a salesperson, you want to send your follow-ups with 3 to 4 words. Now, how many emails? I would say in a cold email sequence, 6 to 8 emails, depending on how cold that person is. It's a good range. 75 to 125 words would be in that first email.
Now, is this based upon research that AutoClose has done?
Yeah, that's based on what we've done and what we've seen. We've looked at campaigns from some of our highest converting clients and some of our lowest, and we find the people that write paragraphs and paragraphs of selling their product and their service doesn't get them far. What you want to do is you want to tease them a little bit what you can do, what you can solve, and then try and either get that 30 minutes or try and send them a question like we were talking about those CTAs before.
So using your research, 75 to 125 words on that first outreach, the cold outreach, and then 3 to 4 sentences max on each follow-up, and using a 6 to 8 email sequence. What have you seen as the open rate using that secret formula?
The average open rate we find is about 22% when they're not. When we use those numbers, those 75 to 125, we've seen people go up to about 60, 65%. So we've seen almost 2x or 3x by keeping it short and sweet. Because, Mario, you said it, Mario, CEOs like yourself, you're really busy. Are you more likely to read somebody that sends you a 75 talking about the pains and the challenges, or reading something that sends 400 words talking about how good their product is? You're probably more likely to read and open the 75.
Yeah, pains and challenges for sure. And if it resonates, then I'll keep reading, right? If it resonates with me and I have that problem, and sometimes I have that problem, but it's not a priority. So someone recently reached out to me and it was about HR applications. And they said, are you doing any type of succession planning? No. Immediately they thought, oh, opportunity. And I had to quickly say to them, no, I'm not. I'm not doing anything. It's a problem. And they thought, oh, okay, well, let's set up a meeting. And actually, no, it's not a problem that I'm willing to address right now. That's not a problem that I'm not looking at until 2020, right? Can I get along without succession planning through the next 6 months? Yes, it's not a high priority. But yes, I have a problem. And yes, I'm telling you, call me back in 6 months from now, right? And That's really the key is just because I say, yes, I have the problem, it doesn't mean that it means I'm willing to address that problem right now. And so that's where I think some of that messaging comes into play that you were talking about is the A, B, C, D, right? At the end of the sequence. Is this something that you're not looking to address right now? Because if so, tell me when, and I'll follow up then, right?
Exactly.
So 22% open rate when using the formula of 6 to 8 emails in a sequence, 75 to 125 words, and each follow-up is 3 to 4 sentences long. All right, that's some good information. So hopefully you sales leaders out there are taking notes and making some adjustments to your sales cadence. Now, obviously, you have a tool that does messaging automation, right? So scheduling automation, messaging automation. So obviously you recommend using some sort of scheduling automation with CTAs inside. But you've just given some tips specifically around like the right way to do it and what you want to be thinking about. But I do have a question for you. I want to circle all the way back to the beginning, which it says know thy buyer and how to personalize to the buyer. If companies are building these sales cadences for their sales teams, it's pre-populated, preset. How is it that sales automation tools, whether it's AutoClose or any of the other ones out there, SalesLoft, Outreach, InsideSales.com, whatever, how is it that you guys are able to bring in this personalization? How do you do that?
You can do custom fields. So you can have different tokens inside your email. So let's use an example of somebody that might be a property manager. Sales rep is a property manager, and you could put in your message the actual dimensions of that property for each person specifically. So if you have a list of 100 and each person you have the different dimensions of their property, you can make it very personal like that. But the key in sales outreach is to personalize it. So you have to do your due diligence and know something. Like I like to know, for example, some interest, and you could find that a lot of that on LinkedIn. Find out if they like tennis, if they like golf, what they like. And when you talk to somebody about the interest, it puts them in a good state of mind. So when they read that email, like, oh, we're talking about tennis. Like anyone that will message me and bring up tennis, you have me reading the email no matter what, because it's a hobby of mine. So I think I'm really personalizing with those tokens and not making your message. You have to try and make your message like it's a one-on-one email, even though it might not be, which is the big difference between the sales automation platforms out there and your marketing automations that might be sending like MailChimp, et cetera, for blogs, et cetera.
But that would mean then that your sales campaign, that first touch, like you wouldn't just throw in a list of 100 names and say blast it out to 100. That would mean that as a salesperson, I'm going through one by one to these 100, and the kickoff of the first message, if you would, is I'm doing some research and applying some specific personalization to each one of those 100. So I'm pushing them off one at a time. Is that what you mean? Or are you saying if your database stores certain types of pieces of information, you gave the property manager as an example. If the database stores the size of the property that they manage, then you can grab that field and put it inside there and make it appear as if there's some level of personalization.
Exactly. So whatever field you have in your CRM, you could link to any sales automation tool. But I mean, I'll give you an example of something that really worked, and it was funny. But the St. Louis Blues, for example, won the Stanley Cup. Okay, as a sales rep, why not reach out to people from St. Louis and in your first message say, congrats on winning the Stanley Cup? There you've already resonated with something that sales rep has done, something successful, put them in a happy mood. Yeah. Toronto Raptors won the championship.
Don't even talk about the Raptors. Come on. We're talking from the guy who was over here with the Warriors. Oh, kills me. All right, go on.
But you know where I'm going with that is, that's something that you can talk about, or something that's going on that they can resonate with. It'll put them in a happy place, a happy mood. Anyone from St. Louis would be in a thrilled mood for you to send a prospecting email talking about the St. Louis Blues right now. So personalize it as much as possible. Talk about a current event or something in that email, and that'll help also get some better engagement and some better conversion.
Yeah. Again, the example you just gave, you're looking at for an overarching trending event. In this case, the Raptors and those types. That's an overarching trending event, which is fine. And you could utilize that. Personalization could also be to the individual. So you got personalization to the persona, and you got personalization to the individual buyer, right? I have a hard time with the fact that these automation platforms, you could put those overarching themes inside there, but at the end of the day, I may not even care about the Raptors or the Warriors, right?
Agreed.
Right. So is there something more personalized that you can bring it down to? That would mean that your CRM has got to have good data about me and is tracking good data. And that's where I think most salespeople struggle at, is not having that data in the database and then still having to do all that individualized personalization up front. And that can be very difficult.
Yeah, you're going to have to do a little bit of work at the forefront if you really want to personalize. If you want to find out a person's interest, you can easily find out that on LinkedIn, but it's going to take you some time. If you have 50 prospects and you find out one interest for each, and you put each of those interests inside the email, it's going to take some time, but you're going to get a better conversion by personalizing and finding something about that prospect than just sending the generic message.
Okay, I got one for you on subject lines. Here you go. Try this. Test my theory out because it works brilliantly for us. Okay. If you have in your LinkedIn profile that you speak another language, I don't care what it is, Polish, Spanish, Swedish, whatever it might be, we create a subject line in that other language.
That's interesting.
And that has an astronomically high open rate. And inside the very first line, you say, now listen, I tried my best to make that subject line work in whatever it is, Spanish, Swedish, whatever it is. So forgive me if I messed it up or if I hacked it up, right? That is a template-based email. But if you can find that out and you have those details, oh man, it works brilliantly because buyers, like, you took the time to get to know them. Like if they speak German and you put something in German and then you say, sorry if I hacked it up in the very first line, like they're all of a sudden it's like you feel warm and fuzzy. Now, it doesn't work so well when someone looks at my last name and they see Martinez and they think, orale, this guy should speak Spanish. Oh, hablas español. And it's just like, well, if you send me something, I'm going to use Google Translator because my Spanish reading is super bad from a comprehension perspective.
I'm going to test it out and let you know. That's interesting.
Yeah, try that one. And it works really well, especially on LinkedIn in mails. It works really well.
Yeah, I believe it.
Or messages. So, all right. Well, listen, those have been some fantastic insights, bro. And I think that really as sales leaders are listening to this, you got to go back and you got to look at, okay, what are my people sending? One of the things that we see happening is that sales leaders are saying, well, you got to reach out to them. Go make a phone call. Go use LinkedIn. Go send an email. Go knock on their door, for God's sakes, right? Go send them a direct mail. Drop something. But the problem is, it's not what to do. It's what you're saying that needs to be inspected. And I think that's ultimately what I get a lot out of this conversation from you.
Yeah, exactly.
So do me a favor. People are looking to connect with you. What's the best way? Is it on LinkedIn? Is it, on Twitter? What's the best way to connect with you, man?
I would say LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn, Shawn Finder. If you want to email me, you can email me at Shawn. That's spelled SHAWN at autoclose.com. But LinkedIn is probably the best way. If you have any sales questions whatsoever, anything I've talked about today, you have any questions or opinions, let me know, and I'll be sure to reply to all of you.
And do me a favor. If you reach out to my boy, Shawn, please do not just hit the little check mark to be able to connect with him. Tell him you heard him on Selling with Social, y'all, and let him know that you want to connect with him because you heard him on this.
Exactly.
Show. Shawn, one question I have for you. Your all-time favorite movie, what is it?
You know what? I have some old ones, but I actually really liked Wolf of Wall Street. I come from that finance background, so it was one, and I'm a big investor. I've always been investing in stuff, so it's one that really resonated with me, and I can relate to, I guess, before my entrepreneurial days. So I would say that's one of my favorite ones.
I love it. I love it, man. Well, thanks so much for joining me on the Selling with Social podcast here. Make sure you tune in to the next episode that we've got. You're going to love it. And finally, don't forget to give us a 5-star rating out on iTunes. We love having you guys listen to the show. Thank you so much for being our loyal followers. Take care, y'all. Hey, thanks for listening to the Selling with Social Sales Podcast. Did you enjoy that show? If so, would you do me a huge favor and give the Selling with Social Podcast a rating and review on iTunes? That would be super awesome. Also, if you want to easily find our show, just go to vengreso.com. That's VENGRESO.com and click on podcast. From there, you'll find the Selling with Social podcast. Thanks for listening in. And until the next show, be awesome. Mario Martinez Jr.